Your debts and your expenses are your fastest path to wealth.
I paid the debts and then I racked up some more debts. Is what I did. And that was the pivotal mistake.
When there's money in the bank, most people spend the money in the bank. It's important for most people to get the money out of the traditional bank where you spend from, where you use your debit card, and get that money into a silo. So Dex, I know you've done a lot of things in your life, and I know you've had to learn some really hard lessons. You call it earn while you learn. But a couple of things I want to really kind of dive into is, you've made a major transformation recently, and I know it's probably cost you a lot of time. I know that for a fact. I know it's probably cost you a lot of money too. And, mistakes are expensive learning lessons, but very valuable ones. So, I mean, let's just talk about, what you do and a little bit about like the former Dexter that I remember many, many years ago, and now kind of some of the things that you've transitioned into and that you're doing today.
Okay, well, basically what I do, I'm a trucker by trade. I get on the road, drive 18 wheelers up and down the highways, state to state, and everything. The old Dexter was spin, make the money, pay it back, and then spin.
So kind of
The
always
new
staying at just like, if you made it, but then you spent it. So you were always just maintaining zero.
Pretty much, because trading my time for the dollars, as you say, because I knew when I was out there and those wheels were rolling, I knew I was going to get that money back. So I would just spend it, because I knew, within a week I was going to be, getting it back. So I just kind of just plateaued and I was just always back in the same spot, once I got there. But I knew that was coming and there were things that I just wasn't, predicting, the future, which I'm sure a lot of people, they're in the same boat.
Well, let's just talk a little bit about the trucking industry. It's a vital industry, in this country, probably every country, but we'll just talk the US.
Sure.
And you guys are like the leading indicators. So when something's changing in the economy, truck drivers are the first ones to see it because you see the change in the loads, you see the change in the supply demand curves, you see it all. I mean, what you've been doing this a long time. So how many of these cycles have you seen and what are you seeing like right now in the trucking industry? Are things just booming? Are they changing? Like what's going on?
Well, yeah, I've seen plenty of cycles, as they go. Sometimes they're, year to year. Sometimes it takes, 3 to 5, sometimes 10 years. Um, Today, depending on what you're doing and what you're hauling depends on how much money you can actually make. I look at it as anything else. You have to stay liquid in your thinking and also pivoting. Because when okay, at first one thing is just like booming, and then I listen to a lot of like older gentlemen today, and they go, hey, this is where the industry is actually turning to, and even though I've never heard of it or somebody told me a little bit about it, today I actually move on it, because I go, okay, so this person knows because they've gone through way more cycles than I have, and they'll tell you about things that's actually going to recycle. For example, um, flatbed trucking is like really big, right now. Now, equipment moving, that one has always been there, but as construction goes up and down, it just depends. But flatbed, you can pretty much move anything with that flatbed, especially if you know how to get it going and transporting it and cranking it down.
That's interesting. Well, I can imagine flatbeds are hauling a lot of cars away lately because there's the delinquency rates and the default rates in the car loan industry are through the roof. I'm just kidding. But
Yeah.
so with these different changes and with your business, we'll come back to Dexter himself instead of just the industry. Like
Sure.
driving that just seems like a taxing career. I know a lot of truck drivers as you do, and it just seems like what is the end goal for a truck driver? Like how do you get ahead in that industry? Like how do you exit that industry and get your time back? I mean, I know when the wheels are rolling, you're making money and truck drivers can make great money, but when the wheels aren't rolling, when the person maybe is slowing down or trying to transition or trying to do something else in their life, those paychecks, they're just like the wheels, the paychecks slow down. Like, how do truck drivers manage finances and get ahead? And do they do a good job of it?
Um, Depends. To me, any industry, a lot of times it's distribution. I mean, if you're a truck driver and you know some things, you try to emulate yourself. You try to get somebody else that either has a truck or wants to have a truck, and you be the owner of that truck. Now there's upsides to that and there's downsides to that. Because that person has to be as motivated and hungry and also like driving. That's one thing I can say. When you're out on that road, you have to love to drive because, like I said, I mean, this is what you're doing. You're constantly driving, you're constantly alert. You're getting in, you're getting out, and you're just moving. And that's what I love about it is that I'm not at a standstill. It's just constantly moving when I'm able to move.
I love that. But I
Mhm.
mean, again, back to like, how does a truck driver get ahead financially? Like, what are the things? Is there like a common creed within truck drivers or different unions of like, this is how we're gonna exit this thing, or is it just kind of like, hey, I'm doing it today, I'm gonna be doing it when I'm 60, 70, 80? I mean, what is that transition?
You know, um, I, I mean, in that industry, they really don't teach you anything like that because they just want to work you like a workhorse until you
Right.
just collapse, pretty much, or you just can't do it anymore. Now, like I said, what I've seen out there and what employers or brokers may teach you, they don't teach you the end goal except to keep going and then maybe find somebody behind you that you can recruit to keep them distributing and keep them going, not just yourself.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Well, let's dive into something that happened to you back long. I don't know how long ago it was. You'll have to remind me.
Okay.
You sat down for a seminar, a webinar, or something to that extent, and you learned something new. Can you just talk a little bit about that and like what that meant for you and your brother? And then we'll get into the mistakes you made because I love you earn when you learn. That's a really, really cool way to kind of sum it up. But like, I know you saw Brent Kessler speak
Yeah.
and you saw him speak on being your own bank, but just talk about that experience from a first person.
Well, went to a seminar, sat down, I seen Brent, speak, and he was speaking about something that I had never heard of. And, I just like kind of like looked around, in the room, and there was a lot of real estate professionals. And he was, telling us about this process. And like I told you before, I always keep a, liquid mind. I don't want to get solid to where nothing else can go in there. So um I am a risk taker, and I had some money saved up. That's one thing that I do with my trucking is I will save my money. I mean, when you're out there, you just kind of eat, do your thing. So my brother was there with me, and we both were in just like awe, and we were like, hey, be your own bank. I mean, that's something that I always, well, I won't say that I always thought about it, but he presented it and he was doing it. I'm like, well, if he's doing it, I'm sure I can do it as well too. So we just, like I said, we jumped in with, both feet and just see how it goes, because, of course, once it was over, I sat down at the table, I asked very, very detailed questions. And, he says, hey, when you put your money in, you can turn around, you can take that money, out within, 30 days. So I did it. And then I took the money out and I was like, oh, okay. So, I mean, yeah, this does work. And that's when we started to, put more money in there. And my brother happened to be there with me and he put in a larger amount. And, he turned around and did the same process. And we've been, I call it trucking ever since then.
I love that. Now, when you first did this, the common consensus, it sounds like you dove right in, but the common consensus is this is too good to be true. Did you think that way?
Honestly, Chris, I like I said, I seen it and I was like, okay, so he's up there, he's doing it. and all these other people, it was a couple other people, they were doing it, as well too. I didn't have really any like reservation. I mean, like I said, I'm a risk taker. I'm a gambler. I took a portion of my savings, and it was like going to Vegas. Like, okay, here, take this amount of money out, and if this is what I lose, this is what I lose. But I had fun doing it, so that's where I was with it.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I know you're a risk taker, but you can't lose money doing this. So that's the beauty.
Right,
It's impossible. Like it's a
right,
guaranteed, specially designed whole life. And I don't think
absolutely,
a lot of people that are going to be listening to our conversation maybe know what we're talking about. We're talking about something that's called the infinite banking concept.
yes,
Sometimes people know of it as privatized banking or be your own banker. I mean, it goes under a couple names. It's been around for a very long time, and this is the seminar that Dexter was talking about going to. So when you put the money in, and you said something that I hear this all the time, but it was funny. You said something to the extent of, I put the money in and then I took it out, and then you were like, oh my God, it works. So you were like doubting the fact that you could take your money back out. Like it's
yeah,
funny that was
yeah,
something you were doubting.
absolutely, yeah. I did doubt that, but I said, let me see it for myself.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Learn while you earn, or earn when you learn. So you're doing the same thing. Your trucking business is moving, the wheels are going down the road. And so now is your knowledge on this new concept. So when you put the money in, this is something I love talking about, because a lot of people make mistakes at that's the kind of aha moment where they're like, oh, wow, it actually works. Okay.
Mhm.
Which is kind of funny because it's like you haven't even started using it yet, but yet it works just because you can take your money out. What was your goal? Like what problem were you trying to solve in the beginning of your infinite banking concepts journey? So when you took that loan out, that money had to go somewhere to work for you a second time. So what did you do?
I took that money out and I paid a significant amount of debt off. Because that was one thing that Brent talked about, was paying off debts, and that's what it was about, was being debt free. And myself, plus I know a lot of different people who want to get their debt taken care of. So
Well, yeah,
that was a number one goal right there, was a debt.
I think that's a great goal. I mean, there's so many people, and we talked about kind of the car loan issues and the repos and everything going on right now, and it's because people are just so in debt. If one little thing changes in their life, like they're just up, they're not able to service their debt. So I love that you took that advice and went after debt first, because I say it all the time. I'll say it again: is debt and your debts and your expenses are your fastest path to wealth. And that doesn't make sense for most people, but I'm just going to have you just kind of keep explaining, how you did it after that. So you paid off your debts with the money
Yes.
that you put into the policy using this process, this system. And what happened next? Because I know you made some critical mistakes, but they're not big mistakes, but they're mistakes that cost you some money. And they were at this point. So talk a little bit about that.
I paid the debts, and then I racked up some more debts. Is what I did. And that was the pivotal mistake that I did. I put the money in, I took the money out, I paid the debts, and then once I paid the debts, I accumulated more debts, and then the money that I was making, I put it back into my traditional bank instead of
Mm.
putting it back into my bank. I was paying another person's bank. Or
So when you paid off all those debts,
Mhm.
you no longer owed the payments to those debts anymore. And we're not talking about the new accumulated debts. We're talking about the old debts that you use the system to pay off. And you took the amount of money that you normally would have paid those debts. And did you didn't recapture that, right? You just let it sit in the bank. Is that what you're saying?
I did. I
Yeah.
put
Okay.
it
So you
right back.
forgot the recycle recapture part, right? Which is really
Absolutely.
important. I mean, think of it this way, and I always explain it. If you were a bank and you loaned money to somebody to pay off their debts and they paid their debts off, you would want them to pay that loan back that you made from your bank. It's the same thing, except for you are the same person. You are the owner of the private banking system, plus you're the owner of the debts that just got paid off. So you still, you have to be an honest banker, and you have to take the money you were paying all your debts, and you have to take that money and put it back into your bank, which is a repayment of the loan you took from the policy. We
Yes.
call that recycle recapture. So what you did, and this is a very common mistake, so there's nothing wrong here, is you paid the debts off and you're like, awesome, I don't have those payments anymore. I have all this extra money coming in my bank account and left in my bank account because you don't have to make debt payments, So you were saving a ton, but then you made the critical mistake of you didn't put that money back into the private banking system. So you were losing some efficiency there. And plus, then you just racked up more debt, probably because we were like, I got all this extra money. I'm just going to
Yes.
go have fun, spend it. And then, well, I don't know. Why don't you talk about what happened next?
Let's just say I went out and I had a lot of fun. Is what I did. So like I said, I
You want to
had
elaborate on fun?
um, let's just say it gave me the ability to take more trips. I
Okay.
went out of the country. I stayed in the country. Because when I got into this process, it was COVID had just hit and it was like wide open. I mean, when I got on the plane, I was like almost, on my own plane.
Wasn't that
I was,
nice? I remember
yeah,
that.
oh man, it was so beautiful. Just like going to the airport, and like at first it was kind of creepy because I would drive up there and like nobody was there, and I was just like, is anybody like gonna come out? But of course, I was able to get on the plane and everything was all good. You know, um, that even gave me the ability to get out of the truck for a little while as well too. And when I say some time, I'm talking about some time like a couple years. So
So you didn't drive trucks during that whole period of time.
no, I
Wow.
was actually out of the truck for about 13 months.
Okay.
I was
It's a
out of
long
the
time.
truck. Yeah, and basically, I was doing local jobs, so I could, write my own ticket, because I had the experience and everything, and I was just doing, local jobs, and that gave me more time to travel. I was out there having fun, and it was just, making it rain type of thing, So I, accumulated up a lot of debt, but as I was staying local and I was, making the money, it was just going, right back into my traditional bank. I was still, making my, premium payments, but what I wasn't doing is I wasn't recapturing that
Yeah.
debt back. And that
Yeah,
was
so it
that.
was just kind of staying in the traditional bank and almost just kind of coming into the traditional bank, which was great, but then just
Mhm.
going right back out the door, having fun, racking up debts, paying those new debts. So you really weren't accomplishing anything. And it's kind of funny in the beginning, we kind of mentioned this. You were sort of just staying at this level, right? This
Yes.
this level. Now, which isn't really true because all of the money in the policy was still compounding for you
Yes.
uninterrupted. So you were still making that money, but it wasn't benefiting you like it should have. Now,
Yeah.
keep going on that because like this is interesting and I often wonder how many people do exactly what you did and make that mistake, where they pay the debts off, like that was goal number one, is like I'm going to get out of debt, and they do that using infinite banking concepts, but then all of a sudden like they don't get ahead because they just go right back into those old cycles and they miss that one critical step, which is
Yeah.
simple. It's like one page, it's a front and back of a page, and you just fill it out. You say, all right, I want to recapture or repay this much per month, which is exactly the same as what you made the payments on the debts before. So it's the same cash flow you were doing before, except for now you're saving that money by recapturing it back into the policy, but you're in control of it. So you keep it all, which you
Yes.
were in control in your bank account. Because I know some people are going to listen to this and be like, wait, that money's still in his bank. He's in control. Yeah, but his bank to him, like it is to most people, is sort of just a black hole. When there's money in the bank, most people spend the money in the bank. All right. They just do. It's just inherently what we all do. So it's
Yeah.
important for most people to get the money out of the traditional bank where you spend from, where you use your debit card, and get that money into a silo. Okay. I always like to call it a segregated account. Now, that can be a bank account all of itself, no debit card, no checks, but it's better just to take it and put it back into the policy because that's where it came from, right? Like the money came
Yes.
out of the policy, put the money back in the policy. It's a full circle. That's why it's infinite, because then now the money gets to regenerate, gets to be reused, and gets to continually make you more. Where if you just keep it out in their bank, the traditional bank's the only one making money. And I know you had an epiphany. I think I remember the day when you had it and you were like, wait a second. You want to just talk a little bit about that?
Well, after, learning and learning and learning and showing up and listening to you guys, over and over recapture, I was like, okay, I had to make this phone call, and I made the phone call to my Jerome,
Mhm.
and loved the guy. He broke it down to me, and he was like, hey, this is what you need to start doing, because we had looked at my policies, and I was just like, wow. I was like, you know what, I'm not doing that. So that happened. And then also, as time went by and I was putting my premiums in, I was able, because I had racked up that other debt, so I was able to take more from my policy to start paying those accumulated debts that I had already put in there. And I was like, oh, okay, so as the time goes by, it is becoming more and more efficient, and I'm able to borrow more from there and take down that. And yeah, so I was I was borrowing more, taking down that debt that I had already accumulated. And then when I had talked to Jerome, I started taking the money out of my traditional savings and putting it in, paying myself back.
Mhm.
And then that gave me the power to borrow more money to knock that down even more. And I was like, oh, okay. But then with this being my bank and me having, control of it, it just sat like better for me. And I was like, oh, so this is what they're talking about. It did take me a little while to
Yeah,
click.
like, how long did it take you to kinda come to grips with that? Was it, like, months, years?
Honestly, it was years.
Wow.
It was years. And I think it took years because I was distracted doing what I was doing.
Mm.
I was out and about, and I was over here accumulating this debt, when I should have sat down and, went over this process and learned this process and said, okay, this is how I'm gonna do this, and then I'll be able to do this later. But of course I wanted it now. I was like, hey, this is open up, I want this now. And that's what I did. But I said, hey, if I would have just concentrated and put this down, then I would have been able to get it, later, which I'm able to do now, which is a good thing.
Absolutely. Your real estate business lives and dies by the network and the connections that you make. I mean, after all, your network, well, it's your net worth. That's what you always heard, right? If that's an area where you desire improvement, well, Private Money Club, it's for you. PMC saves you precious time and money by bringing the real estate world, well, right to you, right in the palm of your hand. So get in on the action, like so many others have, by going to privatemoneyclub.com and sign up. I mean, you hurt yourself a little by not doing it the right way, but you didn't cripple yourself. I mean, it was just you just could have made more. I think that's the
Yeah.
earn when you learn. Like, you were still earning, you just weren't
Mhm.
earning as much as you should have been, right, on the
Yes.
process. And that, I think that's what you just mentioned. You kind of had that moment where you're like, ah. I guess we'll call that an aha moment. But
Of course.
you've had some other aha moments. Now, just, as we're talking, it's a lot of people don't realize this, that every time when I used to travel a ton, I still travel too much. I'm just trying to think that I'm not going to travel that much. But when I travel, every time when I would go out to San Diego, which is where Dex is, I would let him know I'm coming out, and he'd always meet me. And Dex knew that I liked rice and beans and raspberries and blueberries. So every time he would like have the best rice and beans ready, and then fruit. And it was just like, that's just kind of the guy you are. You just you always are serving, to a certain level, like where you're solving other people's problems. And
Absolutely.
it was just always crazy to me that you remembered that. I don't know
Yeah.
why that's, like, such a crazy thing, but like most people don't remember little things like that. You never forgot, and
Right.
you're always like, hey, whatever you want when you're in San Diego, let me know and I can make it happen. And I'm like, whatever I want. Well, I just want to go surfing, or I just want to do this. But you always aided me in all that. And that's awesome. So I just wanted to make sure we kind of talked about that, because that is definitely one of the key things to being successful in life, and in building wealth, is you have to, you have to solve problems for other people. You have to
Sure.
do for others. And then all of a sudden, that is that reciprocity that comes back to you, and then you receive. So, like, you do this for a lot of people. So I'm sure that
Mhm.
has to do with your success. Have you ever correlated the two of those? Like, how much you do to help people versus how much has happened for you from a success standpoint?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have heard that pretty much all my life. You know, my mother, she was a giver. And we used to be in like situations to where things would get like really, really bad. And then all of a sudden something would just like pop up, and she would tell me, she was like, hey, your mother, she gives and gives and gives and gives. And I mean, she just had so much love. And I used to watch her, all the time. And like I said, things would get really, really bad. And then just something would just like come out of the blue. She, called it a blessing,
Oh,
and
it
I
kind of
was,
is.
yeah, yeah, and I was like, oh, okay. So, that. And then, I mean, honestly, coming back, I've been in this seat for over 5 years, and I've been watching yourself. I've been watching, Nagy. I watch, the rest of the team, and just how you guys give back, and you give, and you've given to me. And that just really, really lit the fire, right there. I was like, wow, I mean, these guys are giving, 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 and things are coming back to them. And I says, hey, I might as well just, all gas, no brakes, as I say. And I've been doing that. And a lot of success has been coming back to me. And yeah, I've had my ups and downs and everything, but I still stick to that. And that success always comes back to me, and it works.
It works every time. And I think it's
Every
really
time.
important that you brought that up because, like, I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. I've seen it way too much in my life, but people, they get a good job, they get into a good industry, or they're making a lot of money, but
Mhm.
they spend so much of their time and their money solving their own problems, and we see this all the time. I don't want to pick on anybody, but you see the cars they drive, the fancy clothes, but then when you when you get behind the curtains, if you will, and you see how they live their life, there's very little giving. It's just take, 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 me, and I hate to say it. I hate to say this, but those are the people you always hear about that have like a major thing that happens that wipes them out.
Yeah,
Like, isn't it? Listen, I'm not trying to like put negativity out there in the universe, but you can't
yeah,
help but to notice this. There's
yeah,
so many times where those are the people that you hear about that like something happens to, like, and I don't mean medically or anything, but I mean financially, like
yeah,
something, they get wiped out, they lose their job. And it's just like, then I know a lot of people like yourself that just do so much to give. They just keep giving all the time, and I see them just climbing the totem pole. Man, they're just better and better and better and more, and they're just doing better every time I see them. And listen,
yeah,
you can't just ignore it. It's
right,
too evident to just ignore that. And there's something to that, but it goes all the way back to the Bible, it goes back to everything you've ever read, always talks about that. But yet, if that's the secret, why isn't everybody doing that? What's your take on that? Like, how come everybody doesn't just do that? If that's truly the secret sauce, why isn't everybody doing it?
today there's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of noise out there, and what we talk about is not loud enough. It's that like monotone, but these distractions, they're they're louder, they're lit up more. It just looks more and more appealing.
Mhm.
I mean, it it I mean, there is ways that I'm trying to think of one good way that I can describe it. So, oh, okay. So there's this furniture store called Jerome's here that's in San Diego. And my opinion, I think Jerome's is still around today because Jerome's, their commercials would say, "Hey, we don't deal with the glitter or anything like that. We're just straight up. We just say how it is, and this is it." And they would have this little box, and they would have like this little section with glitter on it, and they would just like cut that glitter like right off. And it was like, this is how it is. This is where we're at, and this is how we do business, and we have success with our customers. And there is a lot of people who still go to drones, but like other stores that come in, they had all these like fancy commercials, different things like that. They're all gone.
Hmm.
They're all gone. But Jerome's is still there,
Well,
and they just keep trucking.
keep on
Yeah,
trucking.
that's
I
it.
love it.
That's it. Yeah, but. Yeah, I mean, it all boils down to, well, my opinion, distractions, because there's so many distractions. I mean, think about it. Back in my day, we didn't have, cell phones. We didn't have all this access to, like, internet, different things like that. We actually went outside, had fun. We like learned how to talk to people. I mean, people talk about things like I said, I just call it noise. I go, hey, I'm just sticking to my script, but I do, pivot. I do keep my ears open. I do keep my brain liquid, and I just keep learning. I don't let it go, solid. I go, hey, tell me more about it. I'll research it. I'll ask questions, and then if it's for me, cool. I'll, dive into it. Like I did with this process, and but if not, I just move on. But going back to that, just direct one question: distractions.
Yeah, I think you're onto something with that because there's definitely a lot of distractions in life today.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, they can be very, very appealing. Do I get caught up in them? Absolutely, but then I have to check myself and go, hey, hold on a second, yeah, that's when the brakes come in a little bit, but usually I'm, all gas once I find something and I know it actually works.
Yeah, I think we all get distracted. I do too. I've always got so many things going on that I definitely get distracted. And a lot of times, like I allow like stress and anxiety and all the things that I do to kind of almost just morph, like I just get in a negative mode of thinking because of one bad thing, then another bad thing happens, then another bad thing. And I'm like, whoa. But see, like
Yeah,
I've gotten to the point now, 48 years it took me where like at a certain point of that, like I stop and I'm like, I almost like kind of go above myself and I'm like, oh, hold on a second, hold on. I see what's going on here. And then,
yeah,
then what I try to do is, and this is literally, this has been my last week. I try to find like one thing I can focus on, one positive thing, and I focus
sure,
intently on that. Then another good thing will happen. And I'm like, yeah, that's another win. I focus on that and another
right,
win, and like this transition has just changed like over the last week for me. And it
okay,
started with like one focused positive thing. And it was just
right,
yesterday. And then this morning I woke up to a text message that was another positive thing. And I'm like, yeah,
beautiful,
hell yeah. And then
yeah,
another positive thing and another. And you gotta check yourself. Like it's
oh yeah,
so important in life for wherever we're going, whatever we want to accomplish, that you got to be able to realize when you're going down that negativity path, because
hmm,
you're just manifesting it, right? You're
right,
thinking negatively and more negative happens and more, and then you check yourself and you're like, okay, take a second, reframe everything, and then you just focus on the positives. And then it's amazing how fast you work yourself out of that. But there's just
right,
like you said with distractions, there's just
hmm,
people that just never find themselves out of that. They literally go into the blame game. I hate to say, like, I don't want to bring politics into this, but like that is very prevalent. Like they just go into the blame game. Like their
right,
negativity, their things that are happening bad, they just blame everybody else. And
right.
that never ends well for anyone.
Yeah, victims. I'm a victim.
Victims.
Yeah,
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 victim mentality. But let's transition away from the victim mentality, and I want to talk about something else that I watched firsthand happen with you, and that was your health. And I
um,
guess this is, I don't know the trucking industry well enough, but I'd have to believe being on the road all the time trucking, you just eat shitty food. I mean, on the throughways, when you stop off at those rest stops, that food is for the most part just shit.
yeah,
And I have to believe that sitting behind the wheel day after day, week after week, month after month, eating crap food for the most part, like it's got to take a toll on your health. And I've seen it, but you have too, and you've seen it firsthand. But you did something drastic, and I remember I remember seeing you in California, and I don't remember how long it was, but then I was in your car. I'm like, what in the hell are you doing? And you're like, well, not much, drinking this tea. And I'm like,
yeah,
what?
yeah.
So you want to talk a little bit about what you did from a health standpoint, because it was a drastic, dramatic change, and it doesn't seem like it took long.
Well, it all started with I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and when you get the big picture, just like you said, there's a lot of, what I just call it fast food. And the faster it's made, the faster it gets you to that point to where you can be what I was, diabetic. Okay. Um, like I said, I just go back. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and it was focus, it was discipline, and it was fasting that got me out of where I was. And I'm gonna tell you, it wasn't easy. I mean, because you have when you go to these truck stops, you have everything that's there. It's convenient and it's just not good for you, And instead of me eating at the truck stops, I started stopping by Walmart and I started getting, different foods. But I'm gonna tell you, ultimately, the fasting, when I learned, I had to go back to school to not like literally go back to school, but I just remember learning biology and how my body actually works. Cool thing is as I was driving, I was able to listen to a lot of different podcasts and different things, and just learning, like getting that training back into my body and how the body can actually heal itself. And one of the best things you can do for yourself is to fast. And basically what you're doing is you're giving a body a break from trying to digest so much, because I can just say Americans eat a lot. When we're offered, things, food, whenever you go to somebody's house, somebody's offering you a drink, they're offering you some peanuts, they're offering you, food. And sometimes people eat just to eat, even when they're not hungry.
Mhm.
They just eat it, for one, because you don't want to be rude. Somebody's offering you something. This is just something that I did. I stopped being rude and I says, okay, you know what? Can you just put it in like a bag for me, or something like that? And then they would, they're honored to do that, because I go, hey, you know what? I'm not really hungry. I do want to eat the food, but then they would put it in the bag for me, and then that can be my food later, But fasting was one of the biggest things, and yes. I'm still taking a tea right now. And then there's this other fiber supplement that I take that puts all the different nutrients back into my body, and my body just started to heal itself. And when I saw those results, I was just like, I'm all gas with no breaks. And I mean, within weeks I saw results, and then people would like look at me and yeah, they were just like, damn, like what the hell are you doing? And I said, I'm doing these two products right here and I'm fasting. Is it easy? No, like Brent says, no, but I mean, this is something that I had to do because my numbers were just off the hook. My A1C, my cholesterol, the good one, the bad one. I mean, it was just off the hook. And, my doctor was honest with me. He goes, you are a walking time bomb. He said, you're just going to walk, be walking one day and you're just going to collapse. And, I have some dear grandchildren that I don't want to put them through that, and I just said, hey, that's all you have to tell me. And, my buddy Greg, he was on me about it and called him up and I said, let's go. I showed up to his house. I actually showed up. I asked him 999 different questions and I was like, let's go. I did it. And I saw that result and I was like, all gas, let's go.
So, like the tea and that supplement you take, what are they called?
The company is called Unicity. And there's a tea and there's a balance, which is their like core products. And I take those two religiously. And, now of course I'm taking, a lot of their, different products because, like I said, it has done my body good. You know that
So you're
saying.
not diabetic anymore.
I am down, gone,
No way.
because I was okay.
Like, I hope everybody listening heard that because I know there's a lot of people that are diabetic and they're like, I don't know how to get rid of this. What
Right, right, right.
tea and a supplement and fasting, like three things. That fasting's tough. We're going to talk about that in a second. We'll finish
Yeah.
with that. But like, if it's that simple, again, kind of like what we were talking about with Be Your Own Bank, how come everybody's not doing it? It's just awareness
Awareness
and
and then
noise.
noise, distractions, I mean, it's just like, okay, so the infinite banking process, if they've never heard of it, they don't know anybody who's done it, they think it doesn't exist, you know. So there is a tea and there is a fiber supplement that if you stick to this process, if you're a type 2 diabetic, you can no longer be, I won't say no longer be, but it will definitely assist on getting your numbers down to where you don't have to take so much medication. I was on Lipitor, and I know people know about Lipitor, and I was on that. And when I went back with my labs and everything, my doctor was like, "You don't need to take this anymore." He goes, "Whatever you're doing, just keep doing it." And I told him, I said, "I'm just doing those three things." And of course, he had never heard of it. He kind of looked at it and everything like that. He's like, "Oh, I got to do some research on it." I don't think he's ever done the research or anything like that because
Probably
he never
not.
said anything to me. But when I go see him now, because me personally, I keep track now. Every 90 days, I will go and get labs just to see where I'm at as far as my numbers and make sure that I'm on track. I mean, a lot of people don't do that. I mean,
Mhm.
people tell me all day, every day, "Hey, I got this really good job. I got benefits and everything." And I go, "Well, when's the last time you've been to the doctor?" They go, oh, okay. I mean, so much for those benefits,
Yep.
or anything. But yeah, diabetics, people with high blood pressure, people with cholesterol. A friend of mine, he had cholesterol issues. I says, "Hey, take these two products, go ham on it if you can." And he's like, I'm all good, with
Wow.
it now. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's called Unicity?
Yes.
Because I know
That's
darn well everybody's gonna be asking me, "What was that thing? What was that tea?" It's like, I'll put it in the description. So, yeah,
yeah.
I'll have to get that link from you,
Okay.
before we post this. But everybody's gonna be asking, "What is that? I need that." But
Right.
let's just finish by talking about fasting. Now,
Yeah.
fasting is something that I've always known about. I think everybody listening to this knows about fasting. But one of the things about fasting that was unique is there's an entry point for every person. There's something that happens that gets somebody to start fasting, and most of the time when they start fasting, they don't stop. I'm a perfect example. You're an example. For me,
Absolutely.
I was in Napa at a mastermind, and listen, I like to think I'm in fairly good health and good shape, and I do go to the doc a lot. But there was some things like I had, like, I could never get my stomach where I wanted it. No matter how much I did sit ups and crunches at the gym, no matter how much I ran, no matter how much I swam, like my belly always had just had like a bulge, like a bloat,
Sure.
and I'd done a bunch of things trying to figure this out, and I couldn't figure it out. And I was in the car because I had a driver that drove me to the airport. And it was like an hour and a half to the airport. And I
Yeah.
remember somehow he was just one of those talkative guys. He's like, I think it was like 60 pounds. And I'm like, wow, that's great. How did you do that? He's like, I just started intermittent fasting. That's all I did. I said, wait,
Yeah.
wait, wait. I'm like, what do you mean you lost 60 some pounds with intermittent fasting? He's like, yeah, every day I stop eating. I didn't change my diet. I stop
Yeah.
eating at 6 o'clock at night, and I don't
Mhm.
start eating until noon. So I'm in the backseat of this car and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, well, heck, I kind of already am doing that. I'm not a big breakfast guy. Like,
Sure.
I just put soy milk in my coffee. He's like, no, because he had a coffee mug. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
what's in there? Isn't that coffee? He's like, yeah, it's black coffee. He says, that doesn't break your fast. I'm like,
Right.
oh. And I'm like, I don't know how I'd like black coffee, but I could try it. So when I got home, like, I was just intrigued, right? We didn't even have like a long conversation about this, but
Yeah.
I was intrigued. Like, the guy was in good shape.
Mhm.
He was super high on life. And that's the first thing I noticed, like with the driver. Like, you're just a driver, right? You're driving people to and from the airport, blah, blah, blah. But he was so positive about
Yeah.
life. But he told me a little bit about like life before he was positive, when he was overweight, unhealthy, and just didn't like things. And then he just started fasting, not even
Yeah.
like full blown fasting, but like intermittent fasting. And he'd been doing it for years, and he lost 60 pounds. And I'm like, hell, I got to try this. So I came
Yeah.
home, and the first day was a bit rough because I kind of wanted that vanilla soy milk in my
Of
coffee,
course.
but I got used to it. And listen, like, that was last year. I don't remember what month, but maybe April of last year. And I haven't stopped doing it. Every
That's
day I fast till noon. And you know what's been in the beginning, it's kind of tough, as you know, and I want you to tell your story. It's a little tough because it's just out of the norm, and your body's like, well, we should be eating, and you should be eating. Like, there is not a day I wake up, not one day I wake up where I'm hungry, where I think I should be eating in the morning. And what actually has started to happen is I forget to eat. Like, I don't know what time it is right now, but like, I haven't eaten anything and I'm not hungry. And like, I
right.
don't need to rush out and get some food like before 1 o'clock. So like, sometimes I go 2, 3 o'clock. And then one day I had to fast for a blood test for my doctor, and I had to do a
Oh,
24-hour fast, which was long because he was doing extensive panels. And I'm like,
sure.
okay, well, you know what? I gotta fast for 24 hours, and how he said, oh, you just don't eat, at this time, and then just don't eat. And then when you go, get your blood work, you will have fasted for 24 hours. He said, and I said, well, you know what? I had heard there's a lot of health benefits, and I had researched this about a 3-day fast. And if you go a 3-day fast, what I had, people pay thousands, tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands for stem cell treatments, right? You know this. Like
Yes.
you got a bum knee, you got a bad shoulder, you go get stem cells. Well, I had read, and it was a podcast, that there was like this person and that had all sorts of elements in their body, like things that don't heal themselves. And he went on this fasting journey, and he would do once a month a 3-day fast, and then he extended that too. But that's how he started, a 3-day fast one time per month. You know this, Dexter, but like he has none of those elements now. These were like ligament injuries, torn meniscuses, and things like that that don't heal themselves, folks. You got to go get surgery to fix these.
Yeah.
His were fixed.
Yeah.
So you can't explain that to me. So then I started studying the Bible and where it talks about fasting in the Bible. And I started getting to be like, there's way more to this fasting thing. So I started doing 3-day fasts. That was hard. But by the time I got to my third day, I wasn't hungry. I'm like, well, I could go 4 days. I could probably go 5 days. It was the first day that was the freaking hardest. The
Yes.
second day, I felt fatigued and weak, but I wasn't as hungry. And the third day, I was just like, well, damn, man, I should go swim this morning. I should just, like, I felt great. So
Right.
like you now, I went way too long on that, Dex, and I know this is a hard discussion, but like talk about yours, because like I am 1,000% sold that fasting is the secret that we all have known about, that we've all ignored because it's hard. But
Mhm.
Jesus said it too. Like we got to do the hard work, and he did the ultimate sacrifice. He gave the ultimate sacrifice for us. But he also, nothing in life was ever supposed to be easy, and you know this. But like,
Yes.
talk about your fasting journey, because I think more people need to hear this from more different places.
Okay. My fasting, well, this is something that I learned about my body, is well, this is everybody. You have that digestion mode, and then you have the recovery mode. And when I learned that, and I stopped snacking, you know, before my meals, and I fast. Um, like this was my thing. My goal was to fast for as long as I could. I started 10-hour fasting. That's including sleep. Then, like you, then I was able to do 12, then I was able to do 14, 16, all the way up. So, there's a saying, once it becomes a habit, it makes it a lot easier. And see, with me having nobody around me, eating the foods that we, normally eat, it made it, I mean, not that, it still wasn't hard, but it was easier because those snacks and different things weren't around the house. I was able to eliminate all that. But just going back, to it, to the, as you say, basics, your body can actually heal itself. My doctor told me, years ago, if there was this thing that he told me. He goes, if you were given one car and you knew that that was the only car that you were going to have for the rest of your life, what would you do to it? And I was kind of confused with it, and I was like, what? He goes, you would change the oil, you would keep the tires on it, you keep everything going. And he's like, you should treat your body the same. He was like, you put good food into it, you take care of it, and you just don't put that bad stuff in there, and then your body will take care of itself. And I am a testimony to it because of what I've been doing. I've been, reading about the fasting. I've been learning about my body with the whole biology thing, and just how those, how our organs are all connected, and it's almost like an engine. Whenever one of those bad parts go bad, then it, mingers over to the other one, and then the next one, then before you know it, everything is all messed up. So that was my thing. And then going back to what my doctor told me, me just being that walking time bomb, and then me thinking about my grandchildren, and putting them through possibly seeing me in the hospital, and me going to go see people in the hospital, that if they would have just made that one change to take care of themselves, they wouldn't be in this situation. And with me having to help some of my friends, I mean, we're not always there to be able to help them, because we always have our life. And If I can do something to prevent that and go back to that mode to where I can at least help somebody to do something, I want to be that person that's able to at least give them, an hour, 2 hours of my time. If I can, keep myself healthy.
I think you nailed it.
Hmm.
But and I would also urge anyone that's listening to our conversation, like if you haven't tried fasting, if you haven't studied it, just do some basic scratch tests, like sniff tests. Just like go out there and just Google it. Like it is so widely known the benefits of fasting, but yet so few of us do it because it is hard, no question. But the way you did it, where it was just a progression and you built the habit slowly, just a
Yeah.
little bit more. And that's kind of what I was saying, but like for somebody to just cold turkey go into a 3-day fast, because that's hard. But if you stop eating an hour earlier and you don't eat breakfast, for an hour later, and you just keep pushing it, right? And you just see how far can you go. And eventually, like doing a 3-day fast is like, well, this is no big deal. And it isn't. You just do it. And then all of a sudden you're like, all right, well, I did it there. And now you kind of got that muscle memory in that of doing that fast. You're like, I'm going to do it again. And then you just start doing it once every month. And your body literally heals itself.
It
You don't
will.
need to go pay for stem cells because your body makes them for free.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Free.
Yeah. GLP-1, the thing that everybody's paying for, your body naturally produces it.
Yeah.
You just
And
have to give it that.
fasting
that
turns that machine on because like your body isn't focused on digesting food anymore. It isn't using all of its energy to
Right.
digest what you keep putting in it. Now it all of a
Right.
sudden uses its energy to do what we were naturally created to do, and that is heal ourselves. And it's crazy to think about it, but like how much can our body heal? And I'm sure I haven't gone deep enough down the rabbit hole, but like
Yeah.
I've read things that I truly have to sit there and I have to sit back and I have to say, there's no freaking way that's possible. That's physically impossible.
Right.
But it
Right.
happened.
Yeah.
So was it a miracle? No.
Right.
What was it? It was what we all should already know is that our bodies are inherently built to fix almost anything.
Yep.
Okay. Almost anything. But the path to getting to that recovery, the path to getting your body to fix itself is, I don't know, I guess some would call it you're going to suffer, but you're already suffering with your
Sure.
elements. So
Right.
like choose your pain, right? It's
Right.
a, the fasting isn't easy, but it is not as bad as the elements you live with day in and day out that make you miserable. So therefore, Dex, as we finish this discussion, I just got to tell you, like, do you truly believe that health and wealth are interconnected now that you've been on this journey?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I wanted to come on here to talk about both, where I was, where I am today, because I do get, phone calls from, some of my close friends that are trying to do both. And I want to be that example that it can actually be done. It can actually be done and you can do both. So I tell them, I go, hey, follow this process and everything will be cool. I just wanted to go back to a key word that you said, breakfast. Okay, I tell people all the time, if you break that into two, you're breaking your fast. And I tell them all the time, as well with this, fasting will include your sleeping. When you get up in the morning, you don't have to do what everybody else does. You don't need breakfast. I mean, if you want to get your body going, drink some water or drink this tea. That will help you.
Love
You know,
that
so,
tea. What was the
so
name of that company again?
unicity, U N
Unicity.
I
Doesn't
C I.
just flow off the tongue. Unicity. You drink Unicity tea, and I drink black coffee. And it's funny. Never in my life have I liked black coffee. I thought it always was terrible. And now I can't drink anything in my coffee. And now black coffee, like now I really know the difference between a good cup of coffee and a crappy cup of coffee. It's wild, and it's so much better with nothing in it.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
Awesome.
But yeah, yeah, like I said, I tell people all the time, just get started, earn while you learn, follow the people that are actually doing it, which is myself, yourself. You got the infinite banking down. I got the health and wellness process going, always learning, always a student, keeping my mind liquid and just, looking at it and then just get started. Just do it. See for yourself and then adjust it accordingly for you and it'll all come into play.
I love it. Well, hey, Dex, this has been a great conversation. And folks, I hope you've enjoyed this. We'll put that link up in the description here for that unicity so you guys can get your tea and your fiber and, and get on the path to healing yourself, putting yourself in a better situation no matter what it is. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. And we'll see you on the next one.
All right. Take care.